I was going to open with that slide and play Guess the Year if people knew the previous CMAC templates. But the reason I put this up before is that I stood here 5 years ago and presented this workflow about continuous crystallization. And since then, we've continued to develop a lot more workflows, not just in the crystallization space, but across the whole pharmaceutical manufacturing space. But one of the things that's happened as we've done that is these workflows become obviously more complicated, more interconnected, and the data flows between them is becoming increasingly important as well. 5 years is a long time as well, and as I think Ivan and Arthur touched on, the increase of digitization and models and simulation is always taking pace as well. So actually, this workflow looks different now than it did 5 years ago because of things like that. So that brings on to the kind of topic of my talk, this idea of what is quality by digital design as an evolution from quality by design. So quality by design, if you didn't know, is really an approach that allows us to define a process, a robust process, which delivers the correct quality for the patient. And this has been undergoing adoption for a number of years and is really a move up from quality by testing, which was done previously. So what is quality by digital design? It's not just quality by design, but I'm going to use a model instead of an experiment. It's a bit more than that. It's the use of any digital technology. So be it models and simulation, yes, are part of it. But it's data analytics, it's machine learning, it's AI, robotics, automation, FAIR principles, ontologies, etc. All these tools feed in this thing. I even had a slide I could have stolen to give examples of those. But what this brings is actually because we can, these tools give us the flexibility, actually we can, instead of looking at individual unit operations that in the QbD world, we can look across the full manufacturing chain. So we're now looking at quality and sustainability and efficiencies across the full manufacturing chain, not just a single unit operation. This slide is a little bit of work in progress, but Alistair showed part of this on the strategy here. You can see the CMAC pillars of the BPCS, MCS, and the CCS. But this is how they kind of fit together in a quality by digital design point of view. As I say, this is work in progress, and we're actually meeting with our steering team yesterday in terms of how this changes and how this actually interacts. So we have things like the BPCS, which sets here's the quality targets for the patient. MCS says this is how I might manufacture this drug product. CCS says here's the particles I can deliver and produce for you. And these all interact with each other, they feed back to each other, say, well, I can produce this or I can't produce this, here's a constraint. But what happens is these iterate round in a loop until we come up with a product and a process that delivers that robustness that we're looking for. But when I say robustness, it's not just, again, the quality, it's important to remember things like sustainability as well, we can now incorporate within this. So what I'm going to go through is a bit more detail, is we actually have a workflow, it's a 13-stage workflow now, which goes through these in a bit more detail. Each of these boxes, there is a lot more detail behind each of these boxes. I really don't have time today to go all of these, but you'll see some of the talks over the course of the next few days that go into that. So first stage is pretty simple. What's the molecule I'm working with? We get to pick a molecule being academics, but obviously from an industry point of view, maybe you're fixed with a molecule that's coming from drug discovery or med chem. And much like all our previous workflows, it's what do I know about it? I'm going to collate all the information I know about that molecule, be it its structure, if I've got a form, mechanical properties, what's its chemical properties, physical chemical properties, etc. With that, we can then start to set objectives. Again, quality is the key one. It's a pass-fail. It either meets the quality of the patient or it doesn't. But we can now actually start to bring our other metrics around sustainability, for example. So what's the process mass intensity we're looking for? What's the E factor, for example? What we can do with the sustainability ones or efficiency ones is actually, it's a bit more of a grade. We can set a minimum target we want to have, there's a good target, and there's an aspirational target that we set as well. And setting these goals is critical because we will always go back to these goals and objectives and set these and compare them to what we produced at the end. So with that initial information and the objectives we set, we start to look at what process configurations might we have. So you can see here, for example, here's synthesis, workup, particle engineering, isolation, granulation, secondary process, etc. Each of those blue boxes represents a possible manufacturing route. So we can put together these conceptual flow diagrams, conceptual process routes, and rank them in terms of this one looks feasible, this might achieve what we're looking for, or this one might not give the purity we're looking for, or we don't have the equipment for this one, so we're going to avoid that one. So we can produce lots of these different configurations of the manufacturing chain. Once we've got those, we can then look at, well, we need some models. As I said, models are key to this, but not the only aspect. So every unit operation you saw there, we're going to look for, do we have a model for that? It could be a mechanistic population balance model, physics-based model. It could be a data-driven machine learning model. But what is out there now? Again, academically, we have our internal asset store. We store lots of models in. Internal databases, we can get stuff from literature. If it's a new molecule, though, however, these likely don't exist, and therefore we'll populate it up in the subsequent stages. Also worth noting that we look at not just the processes and the sub-processes within that, but also things like equipment. So what's the hydrodynamics and shear rates in my vessel, or the residence time of my blender, for example. Next stage, I've got an example here, crystallization, but this will happen across all the different unit operations. But for those that know me, I work in crystallization, so I've picked that example. But really here, we actually start the process development. Again, this is where we use some of the models and simulations. So the first things we do now when we do crystallization is actually we use in silico tools to predict solubility. That gives us a ranking of solvents that we can then go into the lab and validate. And this is the first call out to our data factory. So again, this is all integrated to the cyber-physical instructor that Alistair mentioned. Calls the data factory, go measure these solubilities for me. So data factory goes off, reports the solubilities. We can then evaluate those in terms of that process chain we saw earlier. So is that process going to be efficient enough? Do we have a good drop in temperature, for example? If not, go back round. We'll maybe look at binary systems or anti-solvent crystallizations or mixed systems, things like that. Every time we do that, we call out the data factory to perform those experiments. Once we've got that, we can then actually start to do part of our modelling exercise. This box seems simple. Does my model run? But it's actually a lot behind that. As I said, the models, we're going to rely on subsequent steps. So if the model doesn't run and behave as we expect it to, everything we do downstream is going to be completely nonsensical. So we need to make sure the model does make sense. And again, as I said, this can be a physical, a mechanistic model, or it could be a data-driven model as well. Stages 7 and 8 are very well linked, so I'm going to talk about these in tandem. So with all the information we got in previous stages and we've collated, with this first model, we can then look at that and analyse what are the parameters of that model that I'm most likely to be able to measure with a degree of accuracy. We can then use it to design experiments. And now, currently, a lot of that is done through expert input. Here's the experiment I want to perform. But increasingly, we see things like black box modelling, Bayesian optimization, or even modern model-based design of experiments coming into this space. So we design experiments to help us improve the models that we're using there. That then calls out the data factory again. So the data factory gets told, here's the experiments I want to perform for my model, go away, do them. Data comes back, it's analysed, and it's fed back into the model into stage 8. In stage 8, we then reparameterize the model, update parameters, and analyze the output of that. And we look at the parameters and look at the uncertainty parameters and decide, are they acceptable? If yes, then cool, we'll move on to the next stage. If not, we perform more experiments and keep iterating around this till we get a model that we're happy with the uncertainty in. So we've got a model that we're happy with, but now we're moving on to our actual microfactory to move towards manufacturing. The first bit we do is, if you like, as a tech transfer. That model's been built for the data factory. We're now going to transfer it to our model flow sheet or a model configuration for a microfactory, which can be different conditions, it can be different equipment, so we need to do that bit of tech transfer. Once we do that also, we need to actually validate the model. Does it still behave in the microfactory as I expected it to behave in the data factory? So again, we define a design space here for doing that model validation. Now this is important. This is a design space to validate the model. It's not a design space for manufacturing that we'll cover later on. So we take an input of all the equipment parameters, ranges, we define what that design space is, and again, we're going to call it the microfactory to go perform these experiments. And again, the important step here is the things that we've missed. Are there mechanisms or phenomena that occur in the microfactory setup that didn't occur in the data factory? So agglomeration is my favourite one that comes up all the time. We see it in the microfactory, we didn't see it in the data factory. If that occurs, then yeah, we'll go back round to our model, add that mechanism, reparameterize it, for example. And again, this is a bit of a loop till we get to a condition where our microfactory response is within acceptable levels to what we predict within the model. Once we're happy with that, we then move on to the stage here, which is very similar to, if you like, the risk assessments that you see in classical quality by design, where we're going to define our design space. What are the process parameters that define our quality attributes? We also take all the uncertainties that we have. So we've got uncertainty from our model parameters, we've got uncertainty from our process parameters and the measurement capabilities. And we use that as an input to define the hard space, if you like, but also kind of the boundaries of where they might exist as well. And the analysis here is much like currently quality by design. So we'll look at cause and effects diagrams, we can do mathematical sensitivity analysis, to identify which of our process parameters are critical in terms of delivering our quality attributes. One of the things that we also look at this stage of the decision there is, can I deliver my quality attributes? I'd hope by this point we have a design space that we can get the quality attributes that I want. If not, why not? And then we have to visit back round. So worst case scenario, it might be actually my other objectives are maybe too constrained. I may be being, my efficiency objective is maybe being too harsh, for example, and therefore I maybe need to lose some yield to make sure I get the quality to achieve, for example. Yeah? So maybe we go back and change our objectives. It could be there's phenomena or things that we've missed that we need to reevaluate, and we need to go further back down the stage, which is a bit of a more of a worst case scenario. Following that, and we've got that design space, we can then move on to actually operating the microfactory and producing what we set out to do. Again, this one box massively understates everything that happens here. Ian talks later today or tomorrow, I can't remember what it was, that focuses on the microfactory campaigns and the amount of effort that goes into running these. So you can imagine there's what's the feedstock I've got, how am I setting up these processes, what's my PAT, where am I putting it, how do I how do I start up, shut down, I will shut up in a minute. What's my process instruction sheet, etc. This is all a lot of things to figure to get the microfactory up and running. But once that's in place, we can then run the microfactory and produce the material that we're looking for. And then lastly, did we produce what we set out to do? All our sustainability metrics, all our efficiency metrics will have been tabulated as we've gone through the process. However, that quality one is still key. What have I produced at the end? Does it meet my patient targets? And this test could be of the drug substance itself, it could be of a formulated product, it could be just a QC test, or it could be a biorelevant one. If it did meet the objectives, cool, job done, we can all go home. If it doesn't, then we'll go back and revisit why not. Was our model wrong? Was our design space wrong? Did I get my complete manufacturing chain wrong and go right back to the start? Hopefully not that example, but the option is there if need be. So very quickly, just to conclude then, so quality by digital design, it is an integrated framework. It allows us to streamline, I've not even touched on things like data collection, models and digital twins, but it allows us to bring all these together. All that detail sits below those boxes that I showed you earlier. Again, because we've got all that data collected, much like an original workflow, it enhances our decision making. So we can make decisions based on all that data and science that we've got there. It now brings in sustainability. Again, quality is still always going to be the target. We have to deliver that quality to the patient, but we consider sustainability and net zero metrics as well. And then the last point there, actually, this is happening. I asked, showed a couple of government reports, but regulators are talking about this. This digital transformation is happening and is going to happen quite rapidly. It's not done though, there's still things to do. So standardization and integration of the data is still difficult between different equipment, for example. Models aren't perfect. We know there's always going to improve models, so we need to get there. And optimization as well. This is one example. We've delivered this now across 3 different molecules. It's still a work in progress. It can be optimized, and that's some of the next steps. If you want to know more, various talks, posters and presentations over the coming few days that I've just highlighted there that feed into some of the details here and some of those drop-down boxes. And then lastly, this is obviously not a solo piece of work. Lots of people involved. If I've missed your name, I do apologise. But to everyone who's involved in the workshops and the calls that we've had in terms of setting up the strategy, and particularly the industrial steering team who have fed into this as well. And then lastly, just to say there will be a couple of publications coming out on this in the future, so keep your eye out for them. But yeah, thank you for your time today and happy to take questions.